So I think as someone who's been involved in sort of spiritual practices for about half of my life, in fact, before that, I was a born again Christian in my teens. I've often been faced with this whole question of like, what's the meaning of life? It's quite a popular topic. If you just tap it into Google, you'll see all these book recommendations. Something we really talk about, something I think humans generally have kind of puzzled over and wondered about for a long time. And obviously somebody of my generation as well is familiar with the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy solution to this question, which of course is the famous number 42. About 5 years ago, I think I came up with a sort of solid answer that I was quite happy with. And for me, the answer was to love. I decided that the meaning of life, or in a way, the purpose of life was just to love, because nothing else really made any sense. And I'm still very happy with that answer. That sort of holds. But I've kind of upgraded it a little bit as well to something that more answers the question of what is the meaning of life. In the last year or so, I've kind of come to the conclusion myself that I don't think that there is any meaning of life at all. I don't think life has any meaning, no intrinsic meaning at all. And I think it's partly one of the things we do as humans is we do try and attribute meaning to things, generally, to sort of make sense of them. And sometimes that is helpful and sometimes it isn't. And I'm inclined to think now that there absolutely isn't any meaning to life whatsoever. That life just is. We see it spring up around us and pass away, come into being and pass away continuously. And human beings don't exist outside of that. I think I've seen a strong tendency in myself to sort of somehow think that I'm sort of somehow other to everything else that's happening around me in the world. But actually the Dharma doesn't really, it kind of says that's not really possible. I mean, deeply interconnected, and I'm part of all of this. I'm not somehow outside of it as this sort of observer leading a special life that is outside of those rules of deep interconnection, of impermanence, and so on. And then I came across this quote. So I'm going to go to a little screen share in just a minute. I came across this quote on probably Facebook, because I'm often on Facebook, and I'd never heard of this guy before, so it was good. So I did a little bit of the old Wikipedia and got to know who this guy was. It's quite interesting, actually. Probably some similarities with Sangharakshita in that he's, you know, a kind of white Western guy, kind of gone off to learn things about Hinduism and Buddhism and so on. And it seems to have had some good things to say. So I really like this quote. The meaning of life is just to be alive. It's so plain and so obvious and so simple. And yet everybody rushes around in a great panic, as if it were necessary to achieve something beyond themselves. So, let me just press a few more buttons and escape a few things. I think it's probably good just to drop in a couple of disclaimers in a way at the moment, because it might seem a bit like, oh yeah, Kamalandi's being really glib and just saying like, you know, there's no meaning and there's nothing special about anything. And it can sound like with that quote that you know, it's plain and simple. Everybody's running around in a great panic, as if it's necessary to achieve something. Well, the kind of are things that we do also need to achieve. So when I'm kind of coming from this angle, I'm not saying, well, you don't need to go out and earn money and so on. It doesn't sort of, this idea doesn't really exempt us out of all that we need to do in our lives to sort of keep the show on the road. There are things that do need attending to. So it's more about the spirit in which we do those, and the, I guess, any sort of sense of over self-importance that we might place on ourselves in the process of doing that. And also, you know, the choices around what we choose to do with our lives and the time that we have, you know, everything we do has ethical consequences. They're always there. And the other thing is that it's quite possible with these thoughts, especially around the meaning of life and why am I here, to slip into nihilism. We can be a bit like, well, you know, if Alan Watts is sort of saying, you know, what's all this panic about, rushing around doing something, you know, all we have to do is be alive, then what even is the point of me? And sometimes with nihilism, we can kind of go in a sort of a bit of a downward spiral and get a bit stuck in a dark place. I mean, the question, what's the point of me, or what's the point then, and what's the meaning of life, can be really fruitful. But I think it's good if they're always held in a context of loving kindness, and really just keep an eye out for, you know, too much negativity, and have a good self-meta practice, so that you're able to lean into those questions without encountering, you know, mental distress or kind of depression. I do like what Alan Watts did say, though, about everyone rushing around in a great panic as if it were necessary to achieve something beyond themselves, because it kind of does very much remind myself of me. I come from a strong kind of tendency that I see in myself and my family of, you know, if I'm productive, then I'm good. If I'm productive, then I can be accepted. And there's a quote from Sangharakshita, the founder of the Triratna Buddhist order, who he made this quote, and I had it on my mirror for a long time, which was a helpful reminder. Now, can everybody see my screen? Can Chris or Lotus, can you just say yes if you can? I'm not hearing anything.
No. Are you trying to show
No.
your screen?
No, I probably pressed too many buttons at once. Let's try that again. Okay, I think we can now.
Yeah, we can now.
Yes. So this is an absolute corker. No, I absolutely love this one. When I first came across it, I just found it really deeply radical, because the kind of work culture that I was in, and that I imagine a lot of other people experience, this was really counter-cultural in that sense. You don't have to justify your existence by being useful. You yourself are the justification for your existence. You haven't come into existence after all these millions of years of evolution just to sit down in front of a typewriter or to keep accounts. You are the justification of that whole process. You are an end in yourself. And that's from his quite well-known book, Wisdom Beyond Words. So, in conjunction with my current view that there is actually no meaning to life at all, I guess with that, I've experienced a shift in terms of how I relate to, you know, all of this, me, this body, me, what I'm doing, what this is all about. And I guess I feel more deeply that, you know, I'm just another emanation of life on this planet. As much as a plant, an insect, a tree, that there's really nothing particularly special about me. And that I, in a way, sort of place myself and my experience of being alive in a far bigger context of kind of zooming out. So for people here who are familiar with the Metta practice, for example, you're probably familiar in the 5th stage where we kind of pan out a bit, and we start taking in more and more people and so on. And I've always been very strongly visual. So that for me happened in a very visual way rather than a felt way or so on, as some other people will do that stage. And so I sort of feel myself somehow zooming right out, out of my house, my street, my town, my city, my area, my country, and so on, and then out and out and out and beyond into galaxies. And I first had my first experience of doing that actually when I was a born again Christian in my teenage years. We used to go on these really basic camps that were supposed to, I don't know, make us, a bit tougher because they were quite hard on Dartmoor, without much kit or anything like that. And I remember one evening going and sitting under a tree and looking up at the stars, and just suddenly having this feeling of being lifted out of where I was sat, and in a way going all the way up above everything, up into the stars, and then looking back down again. And it might have been almost like an out of body thing. I've got no idea. We were doing all sorts of interesting born again Christian type things. But looking back now, and in the context of my, practice of the Metabhavana and so on, I can kind of draw a little line, from who I was back then, aged sort of 12, 13 to now. And I can see that this kind of tendency to sort of zoom in and zoom out has had its time, and in terms of being useful. So, I have on this one hand, a sense of there being really nothing special about me at all, and that being a very positive experience. And yet, when you zoom back in again, right back in, you come right back down to this right now, here, me. You can also see, or if we imagine each other or people that we know really well in front of us, we can see, a one of a kind, absolutely extraordinary emanation of life, with quirks and skills and a particular look and a particular way of dressing and a particular way of talking and so on. So we go from this one experience of being really zoomed out to the other of being really zoomed in, and looking at all the different amazing characteristics that make each and every one of us incredibly unique and special and complete one-offs. Like there will never be another one of you ever. And how amazing is that? So my sadhana practice, which is a kind of visualization practice that we get given when we get ordained, is of the Buddha Amitabha. So Amitabha is the Buddha of love, the Buddha of meditation. He's the red one. So I thought I'd sit in my red room to get a bit of redness going on. And this picture here is actually a version of Amitabha, but it's quite an unusual one because he's got a teaching mudra. His more familiar one is the meditation one, where he has his hands down in his lap. So yeah, we get given this practice where we visualize that whatever particular Buddha we got given, and we visualize them in a very particular way, and that helps us cultivate qualities and cultivate insight and so on. And so I've got to know Amitabha quite well, and his particular wisdom, the wisdom that's associated with Amitabha, is it's called discriminating wisdom. It's an ability to see the kind of uniqueness in the distinct characteristics of all phenomena, of everything. The discriminating wisdom of Amitabha sees and loves all the minute differences that exist in all things. And again, going back to when I was younger, I used to spend a lot of time on my own or with my siblings playing out in fields and hedgerows and so on in East Devon, and these beautiful old ancient beech hedgerows. And I remember there was an old tree trunk where an old beech tree had been felled a long time ago, and what was remained of the low tree trunk was covered in beautiful moss. I remember being crouched right down, fascinated with this like mini world of moss and dew and cobwebs and little tree seeds that had fallen and all sorts. So I've always really associated that experience with discriminating wisdom of Amitabha, that's able to see all the little detail. But the wisdom of Amitabha is also non-dual. So it's very much it's very much about there being no self and other, and it's about there not being an either or an or. It's about having more of a both or a neither. So just to tip things on their head a bit more, rather than saying zooming in is better or zooming out is better, it's like neither are better or worse, and they're both the same, and they're both one of each other. So the wisdom of Amitabha sort of surpasses any sense of duality in that experience, and that in itself is a teaching for everything, not just in this particular view I have at the moment about life not having a meaning, and about me being not particularly special, and that I'm okay with that. So to conclude, before we go on to the next little bit, I'm sharing this as I found it helpful. I found it really takes the pressure off by seeing myself as just another alive thing in a much, much bigger context. And one of the reasons I find it helpful is because it means it's not all down to me. It makes it very clear that I'm not going to save the world on my own, or all the other things that I would like to be able to do. But I can make my own contribution, and that too is valuable. So what I've got from this is that I'm both very special, as Amitabha would want to show me, and unique, but also I'm really nothing special at all. So get yourselves comfortable, whatever that might mean for you, whatever your best way of meditating is. It might be a sitting posture, a laying down posture, a standing posture, whatever works. And we're going to do 2 meditations back to back. So one will finish, and then I'll let us just do nothing for a bit, quiet, without making any, without talking or nothing. We'll just literally stop one, do nothing for a bit, and then start another one. And it'll be led through, and it's going to be around the sort of things that I was talking about in the first half an hour. Okay, so if you feel more comfortable having your camera off, go for it. That's fine. I know you're all there because I've just seen you before you turned your cameras off. But if that doesn't bother you, that's also cool. And I'll mostly have my eyes closed, but I'll be opening them from time to time just to check the time on my my minute slow clock up here in Sheffield. Okay. So firstly, just allowing ourselves to settle down. Letting our weight sink down and be held by our cushions or chair or bed, or whatever is beneath us, supporting us. And just looking for any of your normal places of tension. And just breathing gently into them with a sense of kindness, asking them if they want to let go and relax. And just allowing yourself to arrive more fully into your meditation posture, to a sense of presence. And again, just letting the weight of our bodies sink down and be held by whatever is beneath us. Have a sense of your breathing body. Using your breath to ground yourself down even more, to really locate you here, now. And really feeling your breath entering and leaving your body. Just allowing it to enter and leave in its own way, no forcing or holding. And then becoming more interested in that breath. Really interested in that, the bit on your nose or your mouth where it's entering and leaving and those sensations. Now we can use our imagination and our thinking to imagine what's happening to that breath when it enters our bodies. What's it actually doing? Traveling to our lungs, entering our bloodstream, and oxygenating our blood. Just having a sense of wonder at this process that's happening all the time. These tiny little oxygen atoms entering our bloodstream, keeping us alive. Thinking about all the other things that are in the air that we're breathing in and breathing out all the time. All those other elements and compounds, all with a different job to do or not to do at all, so it just gets sent back out again. So just marveling at the journey of oxygen through our bodies. Helping to keep the whole show on the road. Just as the in-breath brings in the necessary oxygen, the out-breath, breathing out, sending out the bits that the body didn't need. So just feeling that out-breath. Each time the out-breath passes over your lips, your nose area, experiencing all the little sensations that it brings with it. All those tiny little hairs sending messages to the nerves, sending messages to the brain. And just marveling at the wonder of our own experience. Just having a more general sense of our breath now in the whole of our bodies, connecting us to this moment. And keeping a sense of groundedness in our bodies and awareness of the weight of our body being held by the cushions or chair or bed beneath us. Just coming out of this meditation and just sitting maybe with your eyes open for a very short time before I lead us into the next meditation. Okay, So for our second meditation, again, just coming into as much presence as is humanly possible for yourself right now. Really aware of your weight, of your body, all the sensations in your body, locating you in your room, in this space, in your house, or the building that you're in. You're just really occupying this moment in time, each moment as it arises. And then just, while staying very grounded and rooted here, not going anywhere at all, just expanding your awareness of your location beyond the room that you're in. Just imaginatively connect with the building that you're in or structure. And still rooted very solidly, expanding out imaginatively. Take in your street or the area that you live. Surrounded by many other living beings. All going about their evening, their day in many different ways. And you, just one of those living beings. Here you are, surrounded by humans, birds, animals, trees, plants, insects, maybe fish, if you're near water. And expanding out even more. Taking in the town or city or parish area of the countryside that you're in. Still grounded here, still very present in our bodies, but imaginatively connecting out and further out. Awareness of the vast amount of life surrounding us from all sides. And then again, imaginatively, just zooming out, zooming right up and out, up into the solar system. And aware of your location in that vast spaciousness. And then, in our imagination, making that journey back down into the Earth's atmosphere and back down to our country, the area of the country, the town or city or neighborhood. To our house and our room where we are. And we never went anywhere. Once again, making sure you feel grounded and present. Sense of your weight in your body. And you can now emerge from your meditation